Welcome to Designer Mystery Block 6 called Silver Lining. We're halfway through this month, so hopefully you're keeping up and making good progress. Before we get started this month on our actual block, we just have 3 pre-tips. The one we have pretty much every month is use a scant 1/4 inch. And then the other 2 are this print and the white on white tonal print are both from previous months, so you can pull out some that you've already used if you want to try to save the bigger pieces for what you're going to do at the end. And then the third pre-tip, these aqua pieces right here, I would probably fussy cut those a little bit so that they kind of match a little bit. And like for the centerpiece, I wouldn't have just that little bit of big flowers showing. I either would have done just one of the singular big flowers or one of the little bunches and just kind of look at it and see what I think looked best. But that's all I have for the pre-tips, so I'll let you know what else we have to do once I get it finished. Thanks for joining me. So I fussy cut my aqua floral pieces, and I did one piece at a time. I didn't plan ahead. I'm going to do this one, and this one. And when I was doing that, I'm not sure if it'll show up, but I cut into this piece a little bit when I was cutting out another piece. And then I decided I wanted to use this piece. So if you ever do that, there's a neat little trick you can do. You just take a small little piece of fabric like this one, and you can just cut it a little bigger than you need, about like that, which I did, and I put it on here. And I use fabric glue to glue it in place. You just use a little bit. And I just did it so my glue's still wet, so when you turn it over, you can see that spot. But once it dries, that won't be noticeable. And then I'll trim off the extra little bit of fabric that I didn't need, but it helps to have the extra little bit so you catch all the glue. And you do want to use fabric glue. So if you ever want to use a piece that you overcut by a little bit, that's an easy way to fix it. So this tip is just a reminder that when you're sewing on those diagonal seams, that instead of being right on the diagonal line, you want to be just a little bit short, just right next to the line. And that way when you turn your seams over, that will allot for that and make them meet nicely. So when you go to assemble your 2 flying geese units, these here, and you put them in half, I used white on white thread and it makes it a little difficult to see. So I used my Frixion pen that is heat erasable. And I just drew a little line where the X is. You want to aim for just that little smidge to the right so that when you fold it over, your seam will take up that little space between the smidge to the right and the exact X to give you a good sharp point on those. So if you ever can't see where you're trying to aim, that's a little trick you can use to make it so you can see exactly what you're aiming for. So when you get to the part where you're assembling your 3 blocks across the top and your 3 blocks across the bottom, you are going to sandwich them together like this to do your seam. And when you sew down, the place that's going to be important to keep from hitting in the wrong spot is right here on this side, just straight down this way. And the same thing on the other side, straight down this way. Because this part right here is going to make a corner. So you want your seam to be right, just the speckle to the left of right here. And when you fold that over to do that, I have that in my sheen already, you can't see anything to know where you're hitting it. So this is one of those times when I would recommend increasing your stitch length and then putting it in the middle and just sewing about a 1/2 inch to get across that seam. And then you'll take it apart and test it to see if it works or not, because you're kind of sewing this blind, so you can't really see where you need it to get. So to do the longer stitch length makes it a lot easier to fix it or change it if you need to put it in a different spot, which is likely that at least on some of these pieces you will. So after you've sewn that, you just turn it over and you test it, and I'm happy with those points. I think it's totally fine. So once you've done that, then you just turn it back over. You put your stitch length back to what it normally is, and then you just sew along that line, making sure you hit what worked for you. So when you get down to near the end, you'll have 3 rows. 1, 2, 3. And when you sew this top piece to the middle and the middle to the bottom, there are 5 places that you need to pay attention to. So the first place is when you sew along, right here we'll need to make a point. So you'll need to hit right here, and you'll need to match up your 2 seams to make those nest together. And you'll need to hit this point, and you'll need to hit this point. So that will be 5 places you need to check. So I would recommend setting the bigger stitch length and just putting it together, like this, and then just sew it the 5 places. I do 2 at a time, probably do 1 and 2, and then turn it over and see if those meet up, and then if they do the 3rd one, and then do the next ones. And then once I was happy where all of those meet up, then I would change my stitch length back to normal and sew all the way across. All right, so I basted it those 5 places, and so I come here and look, and that's 1, I like it, 2, I like it, 3, I think it's okay, 4, I like it, and 5, I don't quite like it. That's not quite right. So I'm going to undo this one and fix this spot. And then once you are happy with it, then you just connect all those lines into one straight line, and you'll have everything meeting up perfectly. All right, so this month we are doing the silver lining, block number 6, and I have finished that. And I did do the scant 1/4 inch, but I would suggest actually using a more scant than normal 1/4 inch. I wasn't sure how I'd like this block when I first got it in the mail. It was called Silver Lining. When I looked at the pattern, I'm like, I don't know about that. I'm not sure if I'll like it or not. I said, well, let's put it together and see what I think. So in assembling it, I definitely do not like this pattern. The reason is because I feel like when you piece a block together, you want it to come together and kind of look like just one big picture. And this one doesn't look like one big picture to me. Like these things that should look like V's, I think they look like 3 pieces. And these that should look like a border, I think they look like 3 pieces. And everywhere I look, I just see pieces. I don't see, a nice frame. I think if instead of a print, this black colored or gray colored fabric had been a solid, it would have looked how they intended it to look, like it was framing it, or as the title says, lining it. But they were using the fabric from the Bloom line, and so they weren't going to use a solid, so I understand that. But it just made me personally not care for this design. To me, it looks very piecey instead of like just one big nice design. But everybody has different styles and tastes, so some people may love it. I definitely was happy with how I fussy cut the aqua squares. I thought those turned out really cute. And when all is said and done, the block went together well. I didn't have any issues. But when I got finished and got out my 12.5 inch square, my block is actually, I'm not sure how it's looking on camera, but it's basically a 1/2 inch too short on both sides, the top and the side. And I suspect the reason that ended up 1/2 inch too short is because like on these pieces, it had 5 pieces of fabric come together. So instead of just having, 2 pieces of fabric that takes up space, you ended up having 5 pieces of fabric that takes up space. So I think just with the amount of piecing that was in this one, things just took up more space. So when I get to how to do the finishing part of the blocks, when you actually assemble them into the final pattern, then I'll explain how to make adjustments if these blocks were too big or too small. So a 1/2 inch is bigger than I would have liked it to be off by. Of course, we're aiming for what it's supposed to be, 12.5 inches, and hopefully we do that. But if you end up like me and you have one that just doesn't turn out despite the fact you followed all the directions, there are ways to make adjustments for that. And thank you for joining me this month, and hopefully you enjoyed it, and please subscribe. Thanks.